All right, we're back at it for episode 5. We've got a lot to talk about today, so we're just going to jump in and get started. A lot of items in the news recently that we've yet to cover, and we're going to start by jumping back to a topic we discussed last week, and that was the masks and the coronavirus. There's been something of an update. A certain study has been released that has claim that a certain type of mask is actually worse. Was it worse than not having a mask at all when trying to prevent the coronavirus?
Yes, that was exactly the case. It was found to be indeed worse in terms of preventing the spread of the coronavirus.
Right, as neck gaiters is what they are called?
Yes, neck gaiters, Gaiters. I always just knew them as a sort of face covering. Didn't know the proper name for them until I read the article about it.
Oh, you want to explain what those are for anybody who doesn't know?
So, neck gaiters, if you've played Fallout New Vegas, is... I'm kidding. That's a game that's worth referencing. But it's just those little cloth facial coverings that people pull up over their faces. It's a bit difficult to explain. It's not dissimilar to a scarf, I suppose.
Right, I was about to say, it looks like a scarf.
Yeah, it does,
but you can pull it up
like
over your face.
Yes, that's correct. You'll see it a lot when people are snowboarding. It's used for heat retention, I believe, in colder environments.
Okay, and why are they worse at preventing the coronavirus?
The exact reasoning I don't recall, but I can pull up for you if you would like.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
The article did highlight, however, of course, what I mentioned in the last one, that the only masks that are truly effective are those of N95 quality and above. So they did make that statement outright in the article. So it's not just neck gaiters. I think neck gaiters are particularly bad. I don't remember the exact reasoning. But all cloth coverings, face coverings, and so forth, and this has been known for a while, so the study really just reaffirmed what has already been known, is that if it's not N95 or higher quality masks, then it's not going to be particularly helpful. You even saw as well in a different articles that were talking about masks with filters as well might actually be less helpful.
Oh, really? The ones with filters?
Sorry, not filters. Vents. It was. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I misspoke.
Because it's an access point for the virus, I imagine.
That's potentially it. I don't recall the exact reasoning once more. But again, what I think this highlights is the failures and just the sporadic nature of this adherent or this these false notions or the hopes of a sort of technocracy. Well, we'll listen to the science, as it were. And so first it was, we're jumping in one direction. Okay, no masks at all, they say at the beginning of the outbreak in 2020. And then it's, well, okay, masks. Everybody get a mask. Now everybody's running to get a mask, and everybody is poorly, or all the places, all the stores that are ill-equipped to handle that level of demand. Now there's not enough masks, and now everybody's wearing different types of covering. Anything versus no mask, you must wear a mask to use the stores. Get a face covering of any sort, get one of those bandanas, or in this case neck gaiters. And now it's, okay, well apparently these things, neck gaiters especially, are worse than no mask. At least for this study. Maybe you'll find another study later. Again, if you're involved in research, the most valuable research is those of secondary studies, which are accumulations of 60 different primary research studies and aggregating the results and trying to see what the results suggest or the findings suggest, looking at all those studies. So again, we're looking at one study at a time, which is again also sort of ill-advised on these sorts of matters, I think.
All right. Well, I think the one thing we can take away from this is that if CNN or Yahoo or New York Times is reporting on it, maybe don't listen to them because they're retarded.
They're also reporting on the current thing about neck gaiters and masks.
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes they're right, but you want to take that chance? They've been wrong so many times. Even a broken clock is right twice a day, I know. But
that's absolutely right, actually. And I was there was an app for college students, actually, and there was a question that was asked about trustworthiness of different news outlets, and One
Oh
of them
no.
that came up was BuzzFeed, and a lot of people actually, a surprising number, said it was trustworthy. And I put in the comments,
Jesus.
oh, weren't they the outlet that ran around with the Steele dossier when no one else would touch it with a 10-foot pole for obvious reasons? That being that was obviously nonsense, and they were running around with it as if it was their big break that they had before anyone else. And I'm sure a lot of people listened to it, and this is one of the big events that led to the first Trump or the Mueller investigation into Trump, Russiagate, as it were. It was this Steele dossier, and it was all fake news. It was all nonsense. Most people forgot about it, though.
Yeah, the wheels completely fell off of the Russiagate thing. Let's not get too bogged down in our first topic today. Yes, it is a tangent, and we're going to avoid any more tangents and move on to another topic where we can try and avoid tangents. And this is just an update on the Nick Cannon story, which was pretty funny. He was on some show with some rabbi. I don't remember the name of the show.
He also did a book report.
He did a book report. He's a good little.
Well, I don't. That one, I don't know if we're allowed to say that. That might.
I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'll bleep it out. And anyway, the main takeaway was that he went on this rabbi show and talked about how his great grandfather was a Spanish rabbi and a Sephardic Jew, and it really harks back to white people, that age old complaint black people have. Oh, you can't say the N-word just because you have a black friend. And he's pulling that exact
I didn't think of it that way. That's absolutely right. That is, and I think it really does show you do find beyond cultures, beyond peoples, you find some common tendencies, and I think that's one of them. This sort of, well, don't. It's okay. Look, I have a black ancestor. What was it? That Sargon of Akkad was saying, I'm a quadroon, or it's or Nick Cannon going, well, actually, I have a Sephardic Jewish ancestry, and it reminds me of this fad as well. A long time ago, back when England was a very homogenous country, where a lot of people were suddenly going, well, actually, I'm a part Irish. My grandmother revealed to me on her deathbed that actually the deep, dark family secret is that I'm a little Irish, because it was trendy to be a little non-English at the time it was.
Yeah, and the trend that white people follow where they're 1/10,000th Native American or something like that. It all comes full
like
circle.
Pocahontas.
Yeah, it's like poetry and rhymes. And so, yeah, we just wanted to touch up on that because it's pretty funny. And another quick topic we wanted to take a look at. I don't know if this one's going to be quick, but it's the story of a 5-year-old boy who was shot execution style. His name's Cannon Hinnant.
Yes, that's correct. And this is part of a much larger picture, I think. But we can start off with, and then start zooming the focus outwards, I think. We can start off with that story, if you'd like to lead in.
Okay, yeah, well, this kid, he was playing outside with his siblings. He's 5 years old. Siblings are 7 and 8. And this guy, Demarius, I don't remember his name. A black man, he walked up, no reason other than, he's out for racial vengeance, I guess, but he just shot the kid in the head.
Oh, yes, and there was another
style.
case. I believe it was after the Floyd incident as well. And it was in a cemetery where this black man came with a rifle and hunted down 2 elderly white individuals for what was perceived vengeance as well. He gunned them down in cold blood. Of course, in this case, however, why it's starting to be spotlighted a bit more is what is more evil than killing or executing a 5-year-old kid with no provocation whatsoever? The kid wasn't famous. He didn't belong. It's not the Lindenberg baby or what have you. The kid, again, it's difficult. I can't even think of any sort of justification beyond that.
Well,
it's just evil.
I can think of their justification.
Well, of course, it's
maybe
racial
maybe not their justification, but the logical conclusion to a narrative where we all inherit our ancestors' sins and the punishments that should go along with those sins. I mean, when it comes down to that, nobody's innocent and everybody's fair game.
Even that is just a pretext. What it ultimately boils down to is evil. And specifically, it's a racial animus, a racially based animus. And there are a lot of people I'm very impressed who are talking about this. Matt Walsh, I was quite hard on him the other day. He actually had a very, very angry tweet, or two tweets about this, decrying this man as a monster, saying that execution should be brought back for people such as him. However, and I'll give them credit where it's due, the one thing they will not talk about, and this goes back to our topic of Conservative Inc. as well, is this very real, very increasingly apparent racial animus that is being directed towards white people. You do not walk up to a child of any race and simply execute him if there's not a very real racial animus. And as I mentioned with the cemetery, or even after the church shooting, I recall, it was a failed shooting. He was stopped, thankfully, but there was a black man that tried to walk into a white church and shoot up the place in a similar manner as a sort of vengeance attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, this is where we're at. I mean, of course you don't... There's no good reason, like you said, but this is what people believe now. This is what...
Oh, and I think...
all of these riots, all of the as you say, the kvetching, this is all what it leads to. It doesn't just get to a certain point and then stop and then we all live happily ever after. It continues to get worse.
Nice, and it's feeding into this hatred, absolutely. For all this talk about, they love this dog whistle term, or they love, well, we can't release footage or security footage of train stations because this might exacerbate racist views or what have you. They
can't
really
use AI to analyze criminal tendencies in major metropolitan cities.
But when it's on the other foot, they do not exercise these levels of caution in the slightest. And you were seeing in the case with the looting in Chicago very recently, there's this one picture of people saying, our futures were looted from us, so we loot back.
Yes, you sent me that one, yeah. Yes, it's an eye for an eye, basically.
Well,
it's perceived eye for an eye. It doesn't really work out that way if you really look at it, but that's how they're perceiving it. You did something bad to me, I'm going to do something equally as bad to you.
Well, I think this goes back to individual failings as well. They have, if you look at most of these people, with Antifa or a lot of these rioters, they're losers. And it's the same with ISIS in the Middle East. I've made this point before.
Yes.
They attracted all the losers from Europe as well as the local regions. And a lot... How should I say? They want to use these movements to get what they want, or as an excuse for their own failings, to try to superimpose that, or rather impose that onto other people. Well, it's not my fault my life is a mess. It's not, my fault that, I have a criminal record a mile long, or I don't have a decent paying job, or I'm not educated. I can scarcely articulate my thoughts. It's not their own failings. You see, it's these invisible these invisible tethers extending from the ground and dragging them downwards. It's the legacy of racism. It's the legacy of slavery. It's Jim Crow.
America's original sin.
Yeah, of course. And you keep building this up, and all that you keep seeing is this feeding into this anger, this animosity. They do impose this onto others because it allows them to exalt or absolve themselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think most people would agree that they're losers, except for themselves. They wouldn't call themselves losers. They're on the right side of history. They're bringing in the new revolution, but a group of losers can do a lot of damage. They're destabilizing the country. And they're torching Chicago and Portland and all these big cities. They're just absolutely decimating them to the point where, like, the police are completely toothless now. I mean, the mobs have, you mentioned anarcho-tyranny. They've been given complete mob rule over Portland specifically.
Various regions, yeah. And in the case of Chicago, appears to have been there. It was that case in Minneapolis for a good while, several days, while the mayor just sat on his hands, desperately hoping they'll tucker themselves out tonight.
Tucker. Shout out. So wait a minute. So I did want to actually ask them. I haven't really been paying attention to the mainstream media. Are they still reporting on these peaceful protests? Because the idea was kind of like, okay, they're going to die down after 2 weeks, but it's been 2 months and they're still going.
Well, they
haven't seemed to have lost a lot of steam
because of just the extremities of that and the unique nature of that. So, and this again, it goes back to Conservative Inc. as well. They're not wrong when they say, or when they point out that they are burning down their own neighborhoods, that this is unwise. They're hurting themselves. They're hurting black communities. But I think where they do go awry is simply that they will not accept or even allude to the fact that there are other victims of these riots, how we call them, riots, looters, and such, other than black people. And you saw that in Chicago. This was not a case where they were burning down their own communities. They were going in trucks, cars, U-Haul trucks, and so forth. They were driving as far as 10 miles down to the more affluent areas of Chicago. They left the South Side and were looting all these places.
They got all the nice stuff. Don't you want nice stuff?
Yes, you can hear the cries for justice as they giggle and keep cheering each other on to get their shoes and jewelry.
Yeah, over the sounds of their new iPhones booting up for the first time. Yeah.
Well, no, it was iPhone chargers in this case. They know not to take the iPhones anymore. They made that mistake in Minneapolis, and the
iPhone,
right,
you can track the phones after
and they can disable them
turned
too.
on. Yeah, oh, that's great. Good for them. Didn't stop these properties from being torched and destroyed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. So, yeah, we're talking about the riots, the racial animus.
Oh, yes, on that topic of racial animus, you do see it building up. You look at the rhetoric, the increasingly violent rhetoric that's increasingly ordained by a lot of these big platforms. In fact, Reddit is the worst place on the internet. In their rules,
we'll get into Reddit one of these days.
Oh, yeah, but in their rules, it's relevant for once. They openly made it against the rules, rather, to derogate or have any negative rhetoric towards any group of people except for those who aren't or who are in power. I think is what it was the phrasing. In other words, you can say whatever you want about white people, that they're the only acceptable targets. And you're also looking at there's another great example. Oh yes, there was this Crowder segment as well. Actually, I have my criticisms of Crowder. I listened to a little bit and
changed my mind.
Oh yes, and there was this black gentleman saying, giving this life story of his, this anecdote where he got arrested for a DUI even though he wasn't driving, and his whole takeaway from that was, dang, imagine if I was, if I was white, because he thinks, well, if I was white, my life would be sunshine, pixies, and roses. The cops would have just, he's white, we'll just let him go. And a lot of people feel this, and they look at whites and think they live this life where money is handed to them, the cops shake their hands. They think they live in apartheid South Africa, when, ironically enough, it's actually quite the opposite. Well, as is the case in South Africa now too, in fact.
Yeah, so actually this brings to mind something of it's a bit of psychology I read, and it pertains more to individuals and their behavior, but a lot of times you'll see people sort of appeal to potential. If I was only this or if I was only that, then I could do anything.
It's envy.
Yeah, and well, it's that, but it with potential, anything's possible. But if you actually try to do something and you fail and it doesn't work out, you really do have to sit with yourself and at night and own it. But if it's all potential, if it's all if only this then that, you don't ever really have to do that. And I mean, past all of the racial vengeance and the anger and the hostility, I mean, when you break it down to individual people, it's the potential of, oh man, if I only had the benefits you white people had. And I mean, you get to go to sleep, you can sleep easy knowing that it wasn't your fault, you just didn't get dealt the right hand of cards.
And it excuses them from having to do better too. And so now it's, behind every corner there's a white guy rubbing his hands together, scheming, how can I extract wealth from black people today? Yeah. Well, there's a book even about that. Look at all the wealthy, all the powers and the control of a few white men, where if you talked about any other group this way, this would be considered blood libel. This would be considered the worst forms of bigotry, conspiratorial. But it's you can find it being openly discussed with a lot of falsehoods involved too, no less.
Additionally, when you get to the people who are actually in power, maybe your politicians, your celebrities, this offers a really nice opportunity to play to the underdogs. Everybody likes a good underdog story, and the framing has positioned these people who are completely destroying the country and who have been given mob rule over certain major cities in the United States, or at least parts of these major cities. It's painted them as the underdogs when they're the ones brutalizing everybody and they're killing people for no reason.
Well, that's due to a lot of smoke and mirrors from the media as well. They're really only depicting one side of it. In fact, you have people who honestly believe that, don't get me wrong, it's not an insignificant white presence in a number of these riots, but there are people who think that, or at least for a while they were thinking that this was mostly the fault of white supremacist agitators. In fact.
Oh, they still think that. There's a lot of people who still think that there's moles or people who are infiltrated. It's still
who's infiltrating when they have an entire caravan driving out of the south side of Chicago? This convoy going around marauding and raiding different parts of Chicago. They were pulling up drawbridges just to stop these people. That's how desperate it got.
In continuing my point about the underdogs and circling back to Conservative Inc., why don't they acknowledge the certain aspects about what's happening now? I feel like part of it is, they want to play to the underdog too. If they don't, kowtow to this movement, then they see themselves as, maybe they kind of are the oppressors. I
think I would disagree with you on this one, actually. I think this links back to our previous discussion where they always play by the framing of the left. And so that's part of it. But by playing to that framing, they see themselves as, if we don't play along with them, then we do kind of become the bad guys. Well, I think there's this unspoken norm, I would say norm, this convention where you do not talk about white people in any capacity unless it's negative. And the Republicans and Conservative Inc. have started to buy into this as well for a long while, where if you're talking about joblessness, for example, we're not going to talk about white unemployment. We're not going to talk about, we'll talk about the drug or the opioid epidemic in the Appalachians, which is, again, over 90% a white issue. We will never mention the fact that they are white. We'll just talk about the Appalachian issue. They're always euphemized in some capacity, or the benefits or disbenefits of something are, framed as being part of a much larger group as well. If, let's say, there's homelessness or joblessness or crime rates, again, this is always bad for groups that aren't whites. We'll never talk about how this affects white people. We won't talk about how white businesses are being looted or what have you. And I don't mean to present this as sort of a wig now, or, what we need is a white party, what have you. No, it's just, I think it's important to talk about issues that affect all different peoples. Now, that's a controversial statement itself, saying peoples, if there's a white people, what have you. But I think as a term of convenience, you could certainly use it and people will understand what you mean.
Well, when it comes to individual politicians, isn't it the fear? Part of it is you don't want to mention it because you're afraid of becoming the bad guy, according to the
and
left's
who is it
frame.
and why is it you'll become the bad guy?
Well, because you're not allowed to talk about those things.
And that's because the left is the ones who are imposing that on the Republicans. The ADL, the SPLC, the Democrats, the news media.
Not the Southern Poverty Law Center. They're practically saints.
What? Wasn't the founder of the SPLC under some scandal recently as having molested his own...
Don't say that. That's just right-wing propaganda.
I'm pretty sure
we're gonna brush over that because we don't want to give airtime to right-wing conspiracies, do we?
Well, it's not a conspiracy. I think
I'm just joking.
Well, I think Gavin also pointed out that the name SPLC was meant to con people out of money, so they think they were giving money to the SPCC. But they give it to the SPLC by accident. So it's not a organization with a great history.
No, it's not. How long before Conservative Inc. is forced into talking about these things, until they're forced into mentioning it? At a certain point, they're gonna be backed into a corner where they're gonna have to say, okay, well, listen, there's a certain way things are working out.
Well, right now we're in a moment where the winds of change are blowing quite heavily, and this is very reminiscent of the 1960s. In the 1960s, where across the globe, in fact, in France is when the end of the de Gaulle regime came about due to a lot of riots and protests. And around the same time, general time period, all these protests and riots in the U.S. that overthrew an entire paradigm that was, again, sort of left over from the 1950s. And that's when you started seeing a lot more of this progressive change after that. And in Japan, even, you saw this, where you had these massive riots after the Anpo Treaty with the U.S. was signed by Prime Minister Kishi. And they were, again, it changed an entire paradigm as well in Japanese education and in Japanese social or society as well. And this change was not for the better, of course, because these people were, well, largely, I should say, hippies. And what we see a lot of today are. Well, I was speaking with a gentleman who is in his 80s, I should say, and he was looking at all this, and he was saying that these people are just the hippies again. They're just hippies.
Yeah, they're kind of mutant cousins of the hippies. I'd say they're probably worse.
I don't know, the hippies were quite bad. You had a lot of offshoots, so hippies is really, again, one of those terms of convenience. You had those weather underground people who were making IEDs, and a lot of people supporting the Black Panthers, who were also a domestic terror group who murdered officers and so forth, and you had all sorts
Would they all be considered hippies?
A lot of the people who supported them, absolutely.
Okay, I don't know. When I think of hippie, I think of somebody smoking pot in Woodstock or something.
Well, people think they're peaceful, but they weren't. They were rioting on campuses.
I'm not saying they're peaceful.
Well, they think of, they're smoking those substances and, just going on about their idiotic musings of the cosmos and such and peace, when that's really not true. In fact, a lot of these people were communists, and most of the terrorism throughout the last century after the Second World War was at the hands of communists. And even today, as we see in the U.S., the great majority of terrorism these days appears to, again, be at the hand of communists.
Yeah, it's funny that, they claim to be on the right side of history, but when we look back, communists and gay people are always on the wrong side of history. They're always responsible for the worst episodes, the tyrannical regimes and the overthrowing governments. And
well, absolutely. I think the end of the de Gaulle regime was really the beginning of a new France, not a very good France. Again, I think de Gaulle was a man who had France's best interests. Well, I don't want to turn this into...
Well, you can talk a little bit about France. I don't know anything about France. I imagine the people who are listening probably don't know a ton about France, so...
So de Gaulle was, again, he was the leader of the French resistance in the Second World War, whereas Pétain maintained the French government of a bath town in Vichy. So de Gaulle was an ardent French nationalist. Again, a gentleman I know who's in his 80s, he's an American. I asked him about de Gaulle. He said he was kind of a loudmouth because de Gaulle was a very prominent, very outspoken French nationalist. He was the one that pushed France into developing their own Concorde. He's the one that pushed France's nuclear weapons program so that way they could have a deterrent and keep a foothold or footing on the world stage. He was devoted to the interests of France first, and after him that really hasn't quite ever been recaptured, it seems.
France has, a few places in Europe, it's just open season. There's no such thing as French. Everybody's French. If you go there and just hang out for 10 days, you're French. Or maybe it's as long as you're...
Well, they've abandoned this notion of native populations, which is very strange. They have no difficulties accepting native populations in other lands abroad. The reason why colonialism was bad was because there was an exploitation, or rather, what's the word I'm looking at? A subjugation of the native populations. But it seems in their own realms, they don't believe in this concept of native populations. There's no such thing as a Frank, or an Anglo-Saxon, or a Swede, or a native Swede, or what have you.
Well, in Sweden, they got new Swedes now. You remember the ad campaign when they were importing in all of sub-Saharan Africa? They ran a commercial. I think you still find it on YouTube. They ran a commercial talking about how the old Swedes, which are the native white Swedes, they had to step aside and move over because the new Swedes were in town. And they were here to stay. And they are here to stay.
Oh, and we can Time magazine itself ran this article. It was on the front page, in fact, the cover. The New Europeans. And it was a family from West Asia.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I kind of like the old Europe. let's get them back in the picture.
Well, I like that. Well, they weren't perfect, but there's a lot that I have.
Nobody's perfect.
That's true. That's true.
But I mean,
there's a lot
old Europe that had a lot of great culture.
Well,
the best works of art and everything.
Absolutely. I would say, leading up to the Great War, I would say, back when it was considered Christendom, in fact. After that, there's certainly parts of Europe that I quite adore. In the interwar period, I think the Second Republic of Poland was a very beautiful place, despite the struggles it was undergoing.
Well, it's a point that's made by several that, I mean, whatever you think of the era after after World War One, I mean, there's still a lineage and a cultural fabric you have to keep
I think
continuing, and you can't do it if you're gonna dispel any notion of a native people or native culture while at the same time importing Africa into the country. You're not gonna be able to hold on to anything.
Oh, absolutely. As I was saying the other day, and that's not to say that they're importing barbarians or savages or backwards people, but at the end of the day, they do have a different way of life. They have a different social structure, different culture, different history. They're different peoples. And if you do bring enough in, you will start to see a dilution of the original culture that was there, the original society, the original people. You will see less of that as a matter of course. It's not that it's becoming, I would say, well, it depends on who you ask. If it's becoming worse, of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but that's not the statement I'm making. But it can't be denied that it is changing.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's common sense. Maybe we don't want to, there are many who don't want to admit that it's common sense, but if you have any sort of reverence for your ancestors and what they brought to the table and what they built, you have to understand that it's in your best interest to
they absolutely maintain and that's maintain sort of the left is a rejection of the natural order is a part of it, a rejection of hierarchy, but also this detachment, the debasement from ancestors.
Yeah, it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame.
Well, they're materialists, so
yeah, I know I know that. No, it's when you think back on all of the thousands, the millions of people who had to die in order to just to keep everything together.
Well, for them, they're myopic, they're temporally focused because they're materialists, and so for them, all that matters is trying to unite the workers, as it were, the working class.
It's not just that, it's the fact that modern society, in a sense, many people, politicians, the people in charge, they're just giving it away.
Well, they just say, okay, very few of them happen to be Christians anymore. At least I don't like saying the term real Christians. It rubs me a bit the wrong way. But you'll see a lot of people, and they are very materialistically minded, even if they're not communists or Marxists of a sort.
Yeah, well, about real Christians, that's something you're going to have to get into more. One of these days. I mean, you don't have to do it now. That's going to take up
a big topic for sure.
An hour or two. But I think we can keep moving along here, and we can move on.
Go ahead. The point we were making, though, is about the winds of change. And so we are sort of a contour, if that's the right word, where we can go into many different directions. And so you had asked if the Republicans, when are they going to have to acknowledge that? And I think one of the possible outcomes of this era of change is that the Republicans might indeed be eventually forced to address a lot of these grievances with, with conservative ink and such. But of course, another worse possibility is that we just go much further to the left, and you see this sort of apartheid state being built where white people have to pay reparations. White people are excluded from a lot of access to a lot of things. Or you have preferential treatment. In California, they're trying to repeal. I don't remember which part of the state constitution it is, but the part that prohibits the government from discriminating against people, specifically for the purposes of reviving affirmative action, which of course is against white people.
It's retarded.
Oh yes, it is indeed.
Yeah. But, pants on head, as you sometimes say.
Trousers fully donned on the head.
Well, with conservative ink, they have all the money too. So I mean, if you want to shift the direction of the party, I mean, you have to go up against all of that all that cash, all of their
Well, in a way,
reach.
that's exactly the problem, is that they are controlled, in a sense, by a lot of their different donors, a lot of different interest groups, lobbies, and so forth. But I do like it, for as much as I'm not a big fan of Bernie Sanders, he has indeed shown a capacity or possibility of raising money from, I would say, a grassroots interest.
The 1% universal healthcare.
It is a good impression.
We miss Bernie Sanders. Come back. Run again. Run in 2024.
Well, I know who definitely misses him. All those poor left-leaning fuck who really don't like Kamala.
And now we're there. Tonight's main event is Joe Biden's vice president.
I like
pick.
calling him the Joe Pedo.
The what?
The Joe Pedo.
Oh. I like calling him
torpedo.
Dracula.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Well, Joe Pedo sounds like something else.
That's the joke. And
yeah.
the best part is that was actually, unironically, some political propaganda put out by, I don't know if it was one of his funded outlets or not, but that was look out, SS Trump, here comes the Joe Pedo. And people pointed out Joe Pedo.
Oh, no. It wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't so true.
Oh, he's a very gross man, no doubt.
But for anybody listening, you should go to Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever your preferred search engine, and whatever, and you should type in Dracula, the 1990 movie, made in 1990, Dracula, starring Gary Oldman, and then click on images, take the picture of Gary Oldman's Dracula, and then hold it up right next to a picture of Joe Biden, and you're welcome.
I guess Joe Biden does have that very unnatural looking face.
He does look like a vampire.
Yeah, he's had his skin stapled backwards how many times?
So is Kamala.
Oh yeah, that was very recent. That's how I knew she was going to be.
That scared the hell out of me.
When I saw that disturbing Botox job she got, it immediately clicked in my head. She's doing this because she's been notified she's the VP pick.
Yeah, and well, she's the VP pick.
Yeah, I guess they want her to look young. Sorry.
Did you see that clip? It was supposed to be an organic, natural, authentic phone call from Joe Biden.
Oh, where he had the script on the table right in front of him.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of other funny things pointed out about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some cartoon comic in the background where somebody's saying, "I'm being forced to do this," or something of that sort. There's all sorts of funny little things pointed out about that.
Oh, man. Well, this whole election cycle just got a lot funnier because Kamala Harris is the VP pick.
And a lot of people are shilling and running, or rather trying to post for her, mostly paid outlets and a bunch of shills.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's a pragmatic moderate.
Oh, that's nonsense. But that's, of course, them trying desperately to appeal to the more moderate Democrats as well as the undecided voters, the center voters, I suppose, because of this recent embrace of rioting and looting and reparations. And Trump's been rightly running on law and order, which I think is not a losing campaign when appropriate, and it's hard to think of a time where it's more appropriate. So the thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you're going to run on law and order, now is the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why Kamala was picked, even though there's a lot of oversights for how wildly unpopular she is, because she's crazy.
She is. I can't think of too many people who are more unpopular than her and who are worse picks to be your running mate.
It reminds me a lot of the same with Hillary, actually.
She's Black Hillary. That's her
that's
name.
What I hear her being called, in fact.
Yeah.
A lot of my progressive friends, they can't stand her either. It's that meme with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the one buff black guy and their hands meeting.
Oh, yeah, the Predator.
Predator, yeah, that Predator meme, and it's meeting, disliking Kamala Harris. Nobody likes her.
Yeah, she's such a phony. She's so transparently phony.
Which is exactly the same as Hillary, which, she carries hot sauce in her purse, was it?
Pokemon Go to the polls.
Oh, that was.
Oh, they went to the polls. They really went.
Well, that was Kamala. Was it? Oh yeah, I did drugs and listened to what rap group was it? She said
NWA.
Was it? All I remember is somebody pointed out that they didn't actually release any albums while she was in college of that age.
Right.
So she's
Yeah,
just lying.
she's just completely full of it, and she got called out. Tulsi Gabbard called her out.
Yeah, called her out for the fact that, she joked about doing illegal substances, but as a prosecutor in California, has put several people behind bars for those very same substances, and then laughed about it when asked about it.
Of course, she can laugh about it. She gets to sit on her throne and look down at the miserable peons she rules over.
Well,
and
yeah,
that's who
she's
you want to put into the
psychotic.
White House.
Well, I can't say that as a matter of fact, but she strikes me as psychotic. It's the same with Hillary, with nobody looks at the Libya situation, an outcome rather, and thinks, oh yeah, we came, we saw, he died, and start laughing.
With she's been kind of out of the news lately, but with the whole Corona thing, when that started to gain traction, she said on TV, "Don't let a good crisis go to waste." She's so
That's the
evil.
immortal words.
She's such an awful, terrible person, and
Oh yeah,
it's
no,
like
there's those
Kamala was
individual
raised
cases.
in that school.
Apparently, she withheld evidence from someone's case that would have gotten a man absolved. I don't know what her reasoning was. There was another man I think it was delayed bail from, so he could work, be used as prison labor during a fire or something of that sort. Just all sorts of very gross episodes of real wicked abuses of her position as a prosecutor.
We don't even have to get started with the Hillary kill kids, the KKK, the hit list,
Oh,
yeah,
Yeah,
suicided, 2 shots to the back of the head. That's a hell of a way to commit suicide.
Oh no, doubt.
She has her dirty little hands in every horrible
Oh yeah,
event.
even when they were in office, there was a dozen different scandals that people don't even remember anymore. Well, I wasn't even alive for them, but I've heard about them in passing. Things such as Whitewater and such, which is where and Trump was joking about it. The key witness to the whole scandal was it just before he's ready to speak, he goes to a park and blows his own brains out incidentally. Or was and I think it's WikiLeaks finally confirmed as well that the leaker from the DNC was indeed Seth Rich, if memory serves. And Seth Rich,
Oh,
of
really?
course, yeah. I believe they confirmed it. That's what I've heard, and I believe I saw the WikiLeaks account sort of nodding about that as well. It'd been long since suspected that the DNC leaker was this DNC. This what's the word I'm looking for? Disillusioned DNC staffer, really upset about the whole betrayal of Bernie, and so he leaked all the emails. And so
I mean, it was such a everybody suspected it so much that it was just taken for fact.
Yeah, it was
just
what was a
taken for granted.
viral meme as well. Much in the way Epstein didn't kill himself, there was his name was Seth Rich was a meme that went around. Well, it was because he was in D.C. and walking home from a pub in the middle of the night. He was get this, he was robbed, but they decided to kill him and not rob anything from his person, including his several $1,000 watch that he had on. They didn't take his wallet, anything. They just killed him in a robbery.
Well, they didn't have an eye for watches, of course, so.
Or wallets, or anything else.
Or wallets,
or shoes.
or cash, or
Nothing.
anything. They just wanted.
And they never caught the
kill
killer. The whole case just vanished.
Stinks to high heaven. Kind of like that thing with the judge.
Oh yeah,
recently
in New
happened.
York, the same thing. Well, that one was de facto a hit, and that sort of was brushed under the rug too.
I was about to say it was swept under the rug.
Yeah. No, it wasn't a
Nobody
hit. It
talks
was
about
just a crazed anti-feminist, I suppose, a Gamergate, no less.
Oh, gamers rise up.
I guess they rose up. Huh?
They rose up. They're still rising up. You
Yeah.
can't stop them.
And they're
the thing
sitting
about
back down to play their video
the
games.
thing Sargon didn't get about Gamergate was that it never really ended. We don't need 2.0 because it's been going ever since. It's been going strong. Well, I mean, look at this guy. The gamer rose up. When do you think he rose up? Anyway, yeah. I know how to depress you.
As if Gamergate didn't already earn the third G, that is gay, enough.
Well, let's go back to Kamala Harris. So she's transparently phony. She's so hollow. There's nothing there. she's an empty void, and you just fill her up with whatever talking points you want, and she'll just rattle them off and, smile in front of the camera. It's not just that though. She does so without any sort of grace or charisma. She
That's
really
another thing about her.
is.
She's very
Yes,
uncharismatic.
she really is the definition of an automaton. She just.
Well, that's exactly Black Hillary Clinton, isn't it? Hillary Clinton was also all those things. Nothing but talking points, no sincerity, horribly unliked, very uncharismatic. The only thing
Yeah.
Kamala is lacking is those weird spasms that she has in front of the cameras once in a while.
Right, and the coughing up blood and collapsing in front of her
Oh,
SUV too.
where what was it? They had the most ridiculous excuse for that, and I can't remember what it was anymore. But I remember the next day they had Hillary. She was in her Chelsea's apartment. And she walks out and hugs a child, and it's obviously forced photo op to make Hillary look in good health. Oh, jeez.
She was. Everybody thought it was her turn. 2016, it was.
Well, that's kind of
turn.
what this Kamala thing reminds me as well. She was for a good many years leading up to the election, or not election, but this election cycle of 2020. A lot of pundits, a lot of shills, and so forth were trying to play up two people, but especially Kamala Harris's. And that's you even saw a lot of, I don't want to use the pejorative libtards, but that's those types in any case.
Yeah, we don't
they're
use
always,
that kind of hateful language.
wasn't that it's hateful.
on
It's
radio.
that, not everybody who's...
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
But they were always talking about, oh yeah, Kamala Harris is, she's going to be a strong candidate. Kamala Harris 2020. It was just sort of the ordained candidate leading up to it, because a lot of these people, they hear John Oliver or somebody go off about something, and so they'll just repeat it. And so Kamala Harris, you kept hearing her name around. She's going to be the front runner for 2020. They really built her up to be this big candidate. She was resoundingly rejected, wildly unpopular, especially, as I mentioned, after Tulsi Gabbard, who really, I think, was the best candidate among them, tore her to shreds. And now they just found a way to force her back to be into the presidency, in a sense. I think it's understood by both sides, or I don't want to say both sides, but most people, that there's a very real chance, and I think Biden himself accidentally tweeted out that he's just gonna, that she's gonna lead the country, come 2021.
Yeah, he alluded to that. He couldn't keep his old man brain from telling everybody the truth.
Well, I don't think he does his own tweets even. I think that was his own staff. Maybe it was a faux pas. Nobody really
I think he said it though, didn't he? It wasn't even a tweet though.
Well, there was a written statement, but I guess there was a...
Oh, okay.
Maybe he said it as well.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I didn't actually. Sorry, I misheard you. I didn't hear tweets. Yeah, I thought he said that on TV. If he didn't, it just seems like something he would say anyway. So,
of course.
Sorry.
But
yeah.
He says a lot of crazy things.
I'm reminded of how awful Harris's sense of humor was, and how she had those zingers at Biden, where he was talking about how they couldn't do something, and Kamala Harris, she had this big smile on her face, like, I remember when you were a part of the campaign that didn't say no, we can't, but instead said yes, we can, which was calling back to Obama's campaign slogan, yes, we can, and it was crickets in the audience.
I don't even get it.
Well, because Biden was Obama's VP, and the campaign slogan was "Yes, we can," but then Joe Biden started saying, "Well, no, we can't do this, we can't do this," and Kamala Harris was like, "Oh, you should have a can-do attitude because your campaign with Obama was yes, we can."
Yeah, that's terrible. That reminds me of that Klobuchar as well. You could see all sorts of bits from her debate performance where she obviously prepared some lines ahead of time that sounded great as rhetoric, and they awkwardly tried to force them in when they weren't appropriate. I can imagine Kamala having done the same thing.
D-list comedians writing their jokes for
That's all they have anymore, D-list comedians.
All the good comedians are on our side.
Yeah, that is true. It's one of those things that's quite strange, how the humor in things is really kind of gravitated towards.
Yeah, where they're not allowed to laugh at anything.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
A sullen demeanor about everything.
Everything now is just. Is it Amy Singer? Is that the
Amy Schumer.
I wasn't talking about her, but I guess she's
Oh.
another example. I was talking about the black bisexual one that keeps talking about how she's black and bisexual as part of her.
Oh yeah, Lily Singh.
Lily Singh. Jeez,
Yeah, she's Indian.
no wonder. Oh, Amy Singh, Lily Singh. No, they're just meshing in my
Singh
head.
is an Indian name.
Oh.
You racist, you bigot.
Well, to be fair, there was that article of that Indian man who shaved his head and passed himself as black to get into a university. They can pull it off sometimes, is all I'm saying.
Oh man, you're gonna have to send me that link.
Oh, it's one of the funniest articles I remember reading in a while. You can see exactly how he pulled it off. It's great.
Well, we're talking about the way the left conducts themselves, and seeing Harris elected or chosen by Biden as his VP candidate. I mean, we talked about off air about how he was basically backed into a corner.
Oh yeah.
Like he said that he had to pick, or he was going to pick a woman, but the left's outrage, no, just another basic white bitch.
Yeah.
So
he got
ended
really
up
pressured by the media, I think, given the current momentum built up around these riots and such as well. At first, and this was the rumor going around that I heard, at least, is that he was sort of eyeing Amy Klobuchar, who did have a decent performance in the primary, I think.
Yeah.
She came with decent percentages across a lot of states. He definitely wasn't going to pick Elizabeth Warren, but she'd lose her own state.
Pocahontas?
Yeah, but she's not popular.
She lose her own state.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, she was the heir apparent for a while for the Democrats. Like, everybody was sure she was gonna take the next step forward. Like, she was tabbed to be the next. I think this was after Obama's second, like, he was elected the second time, and people said, okay, who's next? Everybody was talking about Warren as
Were they
a
really?
potential.
Ugh.
Yeah, she was really popular for a while. In 2008, I think at the DNC, Castro gave this really impassioned speech, and people were talking about him too. And they both just
Castro
flamed
never
him.
really got off the ground during the primary.
But in 2008, people said he's the future.
Ah, no way.
And now he's already in the past.
I was too young. I'm a Zoomer.
No, and you can go on the internet and look it
Well, a
up.
lot of stuff is
Hey! Oh, by the way, can I just mention something? Since you brought up that you're a Zoomer, I'm really sorry to hear about Fortnite. That's a shame, man. I'm so sorry about
that's
that.
our culture. That's our
Yeah,
culture.
I know. I
Don't
saw
forget about
that and I said-
TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok too. But I mean, Fortnite is the real cultural powerhouse for your generation. That's where, that's where the rules. That's where the rules are made, where the legacies are crafted. It happens in Fortnite. So sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Well, it's Apple. It's
You don't even play Fortnite.
I don't play VidCons at all.
You don't even play Fortnite. You stop trying to.
I don't play
appropriate other
VidCons at all.
people's
I
culture.
read.
Gay. Books are for f***ings. Come on.
The
Get with
VidCon I
it.
have played the most in the last several years is Fallout New Vegas. That's about it.
Well, you need to go back and start playing great games like The Last of Us Part 2
No,
and Fortnite.
no, I'd rather.
You have to download
I'd rather
Fortnite
just
from
play
Epic's
Fallout New
website
Vegas
now.
again. That game is so good.
So you're saying you don't like The Last of Us Part 2?
No,
Well,
No.
that's a shame.
it's only good for memes that ironically
Yeah, I know.
make fun of how ridiculous it is.
Joel and 1. Joel and
Joel
1.
and one, that choking meme, the punching meme, the hulking man standing behind hulking other figure meme.
Yeah.
It's-
There's some good ones.
yeah, they're quite funny, and I've seen them turn into these comic strips. I'll send you some of them after this. Actually, it really just had me in stitches when I see them. And you see, there's and all sorts of different franchises. There's one where there's these two characters that hate each other, and so now it's just the choking meme with the two. It's quite good. I like it.
Yeah, okay, so, we got off topic.
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
But we were
Well, I
talking
think
about...
maybe we should do a little tech segment or maybe a VidCon segment at the end.
Yeah,
of this.
well, yeah, we don't have to do that now.
Not now, but
I
maybe in the
want to finish up with Kamala with this point. It's ironic. the left, they hold themselves to these standards of diversity and, empowering, POCs, people of color, especially women of color.
Which doesn't even make sense to me as a term, considering how their revulsion towards the Jim Crow era, when the term that was dominant then was just colored people. I don't understand how that's
Well,
different
I don't know.
as people of color.
It's
the
like
exact same
poetry.
thing.
It goes around in circles.
It really
It
does.
rhymes.
George
And-
Lucas, the prophet of our time, I suppose.
Yeah, that's, that some great movies there. Revenge of the Sith is a great movie.
Unironically, it's actually becoming a great movie. It's aging like fine wine. It's bizarre. Terrible at the time, but with age, it gets better.
Yeah, but the thing is that, they prop themselves up with this idea of equality and everything. And, we were talking about memes. Well, they played themselves. Because now they're stuck with Kamala Harris. And this is... If things go according to plan and there's an election in November and they don't try and pull some mail-in crap with the second wave of the pandemic or whatever, this is gotta be seen as close to a definite loss.
Well, I don't think
Biden as
she'll
possible.
appeal to anyone, is the greatest
Yeah, this
irony of
is
it. She's going to
Biden
drive away the
lost.
far left because she's the prosecutor. She's seen as, how shall I say, a sort of face of law, in a sense. And she's known as putting people behind bars for substance usage as well, and laughing about it. So she's definitely going to drive them away. They want to abolish the police, for goodness sakes. And she's not going to appeal to moderates because she's unlikable.
She's hollow.
Hollow. She wasn't supported in the primaries. The moderates in the primaries, they liked a little bit. It was Joe Biden, but they also liked that Buttigieg fellow. Those were the two.
Oh, Pete Buddy's gay?
Yeah. The butt gay.
Did you know he's gay?
Oh yeah. I've heard, incidentally.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. Unironically, though, we really shouldn't have that. But well,
Yeah.
well,
Fair enough.
they're always talking about, Trump's bad for foreign policies. Yeah, okay, we're gonna send the gay guy to a country where they execute homosexuals. Okay, that's not.
That's
gonna
a good point.
complicate it.
I actually haven't heard that one before. The argument usually doesn't get that far. It's just, oh, but he's gay. And then the argument, between me and my friends usually ends. It's like, oh, yeah, that's true. Next. Well, go ahead.
Well, all sorts of things I don't like about him. But what I was getting at is that the moderates liked him. The moderates liked Biden, and I think they also liked Klobuchar a little bit. The progressives liked the far left, that is. They quite liked Bernie, and then there was also a lot that liked Warren, Elizabeth Warren. So nobody
Jeez.
liked Kamala is the thing. Not
What
left
a bunch
nor
of
center.
knuckleheads. Yeah. Well, the thing is that if you're gonna pigeonhole yourself into picking a black woman as the VP, and then you look at the options that they
Yeah,
had.
that's
who did
issue.
they have to pick?
Susan Rice, the governor of Michigan, was one. Nobody likable in any case.
People talked about Stacey Abrams.
Oh, is that the one? Which one is she?
She's the fat black woman.
Oh yeah, with the gap in the teeth. Jeez, none of them.
Yeah, they're all incompetent, and
They're all known right now for running places that are on fire.
it's true, and it speaks to their incompetence that Harris was the best choice.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
She was the best they had.
Was Susan Rice the one that was the neocon Zionist that wanted?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I've given the names. Right.
Yeah.
She was the other one, and I think they didn't go with her because she's a neocon Zionist, and that wouldn't fly so well either.
Probably wouldn't. And I there was part of me that for a second I just expected to wake up one day and see that Biden picked Michelle Obama, or
was
Oprah or
always
something.
the impossible dream of the left. I always knew it was never going to be that, but they kept going. Oh, it's going to be Michelle Obama, guys. Just wait, it's going to be Michelle Obama.
But they're so crazy
They
that
think
you could see it happening.
Oh, jeez. Well, I don't think it was ever a possibility, but they're crazy enough to believe it's a possibility.
Everybody, I think leading up to 2016, people did actually sincerely want Oprah to run for president.
Yeah, I guess that's quite ironic given their criticisms of Trump. Trump at least is a millionaire businessman. And Oprah just was a television host, isn't she?
Well, she's peddling racial propaganda now. She has a new show on her own network where she confronts white people about their privilege, and they break down and cry.
I've seen clips of her show. It's terrible. Where she has a bunch of black fathers on, as a certain individual gentleman I quite respect, JLP, it calls them these betas. Betas, he says.
Beta.
Where they're giving their kids the talk. They go, hey, 5-year-old kid, let me tell you about how the police want to murder you because you're black, even though it's just an unfounded claim. It's just a hysteria. It's a mania.
And then, these kids grow up thinking that, and it's no wonder they want to kill all the police, because their parents have been teaching them for years. And a lot of them have this
irrational fear. And that was, again, going back to that Crowder video, where he was talking to the second gentleman, and he was accusing Crowder of trying to emotionally manipulate him, but eventually what everything came down to is, no matter the statistics, no matter how pressing or dangerous crime is or these riots are, he still has this irrational fear of the police, because he's talking about, sometimes I can't sleep, I'm just up all night because I just have these nightmares, this terror that my brother and sister get murdered by the police.
Jesus. It sounds like he needs to be in a mental institution or something. He's been traumatized.
He does strike me almost as a sort of PTSD. He needs a therapist at this point. But that's what a lot of these institutions, a lot of this propaganda, a lot of this mania, the sensationalism, and fear-mongering is doing. It does instill this genuine, irrational fear of the police. And that's why you see these videos where it's all you have to do is comply with the police, but they're doing anything but complying with the police. Goodness sake, there's a guy who jumps off a bridge because the cop told him to get down.
And they're trying to rip tasers out of cops' heads, and then they wonder why they get shot. And the rest of the country, the left wonders why you would shoot a man who's trying to rip tasers out of people. So tasers are apparently, they would say, they're deadly weapons. You shouldn't use them. But when
there's
the
a court
perpetrators
precedent for
use
that,
them,
ironically enough, a police officer used a taser when it was inappropriate, and it was, I believe, recognized as a potentially lethal weapon. But of course,
it is a lethal weapon.
It can be, absolutely, given a person's medical conditions and such. But when it's used against a policeman, however, it suddenly just becomes a toy.
Just a taser, bro. Just a taser, bro. Don't tase me, bro. Yeah, you might be young for that one too. I don't know.
I think I am too young for that. I don't remember it.
That was one of the first memes, I think.
Well, the very first meme I know was the dancing baby.
Okay, well, it's the first meme of the social media generation, perhaps. I don't know. It was...
Yeah, the dancing baby was emailed to everyone. The first actual meme, I suppose, as we understand it, was Kilroy.
As we understand it. Oh, yeah, Kilroy. Oh, yeah. That was in all those old cartoons. Whenever you would look at the background of the Looney Tunes, they would have Kilroy.
And the Germans didn't understand memes in the way the left doesn't now, and so they actually had, their intelligence departments trying to investigate who the heck is this fudging Kilroy.
Huh, that's funny.
It's
looks like the left and the Nazis don't have... They have more in common than they think.
Who is this Pepe? This Pepe?
Why is he so racist?
Why does he keep showing up on everything?
With that antagonism towards police, it's really like taking a jar and capturing a hornet.
Well, I think there are legitimate issues with the police in the U.S.
Oh, of course. There's legitimate issues with every single thing on the planet.
Well, some more egregious than others. I think the police unions, in the same way teachers' unions, have a little too much power, especially when it's a government-ran organization. I think that sort of collective bargaining has proven a lot more harmful than good.
I agree with you on that, but I mean, I'd rather have the garbage police unions than no police.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to play their game where we had no police, and it's not looking good.
Oh yeah, the greatest irony is, for a while, and I agreed with it too, you would see the police with an AMRAP, these vehicles that we use in the Iraq War that are meant to handle IEDs, explosions, very heavy artillery shelling and such.
Yeah.
And I would think that, well, the police doesn't need this, but given the recent circumstances, I guess the police actually do now need it. They are now creating the circumstances where the police need these absurdly, how should I say, militarized vehicles.
OP. Police, you're OP. Well, we thought they were OP, but it turns out that they've been nerfed. Yeah, the latest update nerfed them.
Well, not just nerfed them, but apparently they need it to be now, at least for now. given the circumstances where you have just these mobs of people, and a lot of them are armed. In the case of Chicago recently, people were quite petrified because a lot of them were armed and openly touting firearms. But in the case of Portland now, what was it? Oh, yes, that's a different story, I suppose. But I've lost a lot of respect, even for the common man of Portland, because these people are going around neighborhood to neighborhood and no one's doing anything. They're just, hoping they go away. Whereas in a lot of other places, that hasn't been the case. But Portland, maybe the other rest of Oregon is quite all right. But Portland,
they're probably waiting for the government to step in and fix everything.
But the government has confirmed that it is stepping out. We're out. They threw their hands up. No, we're done.
Yeah, suddenly the Second Amendment doesn't seem like such a bad idea, huh?
Oh, that's another
I see a lot
thing.
of lefties
Similar to the police equipment being justified now. Yeah, exactly. Now you're seeing, for decades, why do you need a gun? Just call the cops. Oh, the cops are leaving. Okay, well, maybe you need the firearms now. That was the case.
They're sold out? Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. There's never been a greater demand for firearms than now. And the Democrat Party has never pushed harder for abolishing the Second Amendment than now either. And so I think it's really... people are... I think Trump has a much greater chance at re-election than a lot of polls are giving him credit for.
Well, the polls were wrong last time. I'm hoping they're going to be wrong this time.
I think they will be. You're seeing a lot of people who are terrified to admit they're Trump supporters. You had a black gentleman, I think it was in Seattle. Was it Seattle? Or Portland? One of those two places. Where he was showing up as a counter-protester. And he got stabbed outright by this white Antifa, who also happened to...
Oh, yeah, I heard about this one.
Yeah, he also happened to be a child predator or pedophile, go figure.
Oh. So those ones are okay, but you can't support Trump.
Oh, that's exactly, and it really does reaffirm the point I mentioned that Antifa attracts a lot of losers. Look at this man, this depraved white pedophile who stabs people because they disagree with him on politics. A lunatic.
Yeah, it's all messed up. It's all messed up. It's nothing but a joke.
Oh, also, I guess fitting for you mentioned everything's a joke, fitting for the times. Apparently, this is what I've heard, I haven't confirmed it, but the Libertarian candidate for president has had to call off public appearances because she has been bitten by a bat.
I did not hear about that. Who is this?
Jeez, I can't remember her name. I wish I could. I stopped following the Libertarian Party ever since Gary Johnson, because they went off Gary Johnson was a disgrace, and they just...
Well, let's not get into Gary Johnson right now.
Yeah, sorry.
She got bit by a bat. She's either going to get the Rona or she's going to get bat superpowers.
Well,
I don't know which one I have my money on.
The express was over rabies, I suppose, not the Rona.
Well, nobody cares about rabies anymore.
Yeah, I guess. Well, she does.
It's the Rona. The Rona's the hot new ticket in town. Come on. Gives a shit about rabies.
No, that's in Brazil. It's particularly bad. They have a lot of bats over there. It's actually where
We're not in Brazil.
Yeah.
We're in a country that used to be nice.
Oh, that's where that Bolsonaro is. That guy is. Oh, that's true as well. A country that used to be nice. Couldn't have put it better. And I think it can be nice again. We just, it gets worse when good men do nothing, is what I say. I'm not one of those black.
As you've pointed out in every episode so far, evil prevails when good men stay their hands. And since you've hit your quota for saying that quote today, I guess we can start wrapping things up. So before we finish up, do you have any closing statements or closing thoughts that you'd like to bring up?
I suppose one of those things that I would caution people is, yes, we see a great many people, let's say of certain demographics, acting out in ways that might be seen as contemptible or egregious or beyond the pale. But I would implore you not to allow it to prejudice your views or allow anger to fill in your hearts. I think never get angry. You should never be angry. You shouldn't allow hatred to tailor your thoughts to hatred. And I think you'll have a much more productive assessment and mindset on these matters than you would otherwise.
And to that, I would also say, never be angry and never e-girls.
Yeah,
And I
never
think with
e-girls.
that,
Oh,
we could
jeez.
close things out for today. All right, so thanks for joining us on episode 5, and we will see you next time on Red Weather Radio.